The darkness of the night had not yet fully lifted when the horizon began to whisper of another decisive day. For 2 days, swords had spoken in the battlefield, hooves had pounded the earth without mercy, and the scent of blood had dissolved into the air. But the third day, it was not merely another day, it was a turning point of destiny. The Sultan knew this war was not only of steel, it was a war of psychology. The Tatar conquerors, whose very name had become a symbol of terror, had already established psychological dominance over the Muslims. Wherever their footsteps fell, fear arrived before them. The Sultan was certain such dominance could not be shattered by an ordinary strike. It required a wound so deep that it would echo in the chest of history itself. And the name of that wound was Genghis Khan. That bloodthirsty man whose mere shadow made empires tremble, today for the first time stood present on the battlefield himself. The Sultan had made his decision. The third day's battle must be decisive at any cost, and the key to that decision lay in striking the enemy's heart. The Sultan's gaze was fixed upon the enemy's center. He knew that if he succeeded in killing Genghis Khan in open battle, the terror the Tatars had built over years would shatter in a single moment. Despite their vast numbers, their footing would crumble so severely that it might never steady again. But the target was not easy. To reach Genghis Khan, the Tatar center had to be pierced, and that center was a wall of steel. The majority of Tatar forces stood there. Genghis Khan's personal armored guards alone numbered no fewer than 10,000. The Sultan's limited troops were insufficient to break through that iron fortress. Reinforcements were needed at the center. And this was the moment when strategy decided to gamble. After deep deliberation, the Sultan resolved that at the critical hour he would draw soldiers from his left wing and reinforce the center. During the past 2 days, the Khwarazmian army's left wing had remained secure. The mountain shelter had provided them with a natural fortress. They stood in a defensive position, like a protected reserve. The Sultan believed that even today, the left flank would likely avoid direct assault. Yet the danger remained. If the Tatars somehow attacked from behind the mountain, then the weakening of the left flank could prove fatal for the entire army. It was a gamble, a risk whose price could be an entire empire. But the Sultan understood. Sometimes, to change history, one must embrace danger. The morning of the third day was not merely the beginning of another battle. It was the answer to a question. Can the idol of fear be shattered, or will Tatar terror become destiny forever? The battlefield stood silent, but the coming moment was screaming. The third day's plan was not simply an attack, it was patience, deception of war, and the orchestration of a final strike. The Sultan decided that in the early hours, aggressive pressure would be unleashed upon the Tatar left wing, so intense that they would remain entangled on that front. Their eyes would shift away from the center, their focus would scatter. After hours of fierce combat, when the enemy had committed its full strength, when the freshness of morning had turned into exhaustion, and when steel-strong arms began to tremble, then the Sultan would play his true card. The fresh troops from the left flank would be moved into the center, and a storm-like assault would be launched upon the Tatar heart under Genghis Khan's command. This attack would not be merely military, it would be a stripe upon the enemy's very soul. The Sultan knew a proud commander like Genghis Khan would never accept the humiliation of retreat before him. He would confront him face to face, and if divine support accompanied them, perhaps in this very field, the end of that great tribulation would be written. This strategy was not merely a tactic, it was a prayer being written on the edge of a sword. As the first ray of the sun rose over the horizon, the earth felt the weight of a terrifying battle upon its chest. The Mujahideen, setting aside their small numbers, placing their trust solely in Allah, had stepped into the field for either an impossible victory or martyrdom. Despite days of exhaustion, there was no tremor in their steps. In their eyes burned the same passion that is born from faith. The sun climbed higher, and the flames of battle reached their peak. The earth had turned red with blood. Arrows pierced through bodies. Swords struck like lightning. Heads fell to the ground, and human screams dissolved into the air. The historian Ibn al-Athir described the intensity of this battle in these words: "All agreed that compared to this war, all previous battles seemed like mere games. This was not simply a confrontation, it was a blazing chapter of history." From the very beginning, the Muslims were not defensive, they were on the offensive. Following the Sultan's command, the commander of the right wing, Amin al-Mulk, had placed immense pressure upon the Tatar left flank. Then the heavens witnessed in astonishment a few thousand devoted warriors pushing back a vast Tatar front. The Tatar left wing began to scatter and retreat northward along the riverbank. Amin al-Mulk pursued them. Along the river, a massive army seemed to flow backward, as if the current of a flood had reversed. At a suitable position, the Tatars regrouped. This time, command rested in the hands of one of Genghis Khan's sons. They turned back, and steel collided with steel once more. Lightning flashed again from the swords. The pounding of hooves shook the earth. But the brave men of Amin al-Mulk displayed such valor that the enemy's footing once again gave way. The Tatars broke into smaller groups and scattered. This was not merely a victory on one front, it was the first fruit of the strategy the Sultan had devised in the silence of night. Yet the question remained, would this pressure be enough to weaken the enemy's center? Or did the Tatar heart still stand like a wall of iron? The third day had not yet reached its climax. The Muslim army's left wing stood guarded by rugged mountains. It was as if nature itself had raised a fortress, rocks, heights, and archers stationed at various elevations. The Tatar right wing attempted to advance in that direction, but to move forward against the mountain wall and the deadly rain of arrows from above was nothing short of suicide. Death stood at every step, and so the Tatars halted. Their advance stopped there. At the center of the army stood the embodiment of resolve and steadfastness, Sultan Jalal ad-Din Khwarazm Shah. His eyes surveyed every corner of the battlefield. No panic, no haste, only a deep, composed seriousness. When he saw that the left wing was secure for the time being, and that the Tatars lacked the courage to advance, he quietly withdrew a few detachments from there and sent them to reinforce Amin al-Mulk. This was the very strategy whose seed had been planted in the darkness of night. The objective was clear: to completely shatter the Tatar left flank. The sun now blazed at the center of the sky, but on the ground there was no light, only the shadow of death. A dark storm of dust covered the field. Through the haze, the gleam of polished swords and spears flashed like lightning in the darkness. Cries, battle shouts, the thunder of hooves, the earth trembled. After hours of relentless combat, the moment arrived for which the Sultan had long prepared. It was a gamble of life and death, either a magnificent victory or a fatal defeat. There was no middle path left. Now every strike upon the field was not merely upon flesh, it was upon destiny. The Tatar left wing had weakened, the Muslim left flank was secure. The enemy's strength was no longer what it had been in the morning. The moment was near when the Sultan would move his center. That moment in which the death of one man might mean the end of a great tribulation. But could the wall of steel be broken? Would Genghis Khan abandon the field? Or would history record yet another blood-soaked chapter? The decisive charge is yet to come. In Part 4, we shall see whether the Sultan reaches his target and what becomes of that storm-like assault. The battlefield has not yet fallen silent. The story is not yet over.